I can remember when I joined the military later on, I went to chapel for the first time and couldn't stand it. It was so scripted and I just couldn't get anything out of it. So a group of guys that were there in the chapel, I noticed they were from my barracks and my platoon. And I asked them, I said, would you guys like to just have church in our barracks? And they said, yeah, we don't have a preacher here. I was like, I'll try. I was a new Christian, man. I didn't know anything about that stuff. Before I graduated from boot camp, I had won 17 people to Jesus. Every Sunday we had our own chapel sitting right there. I had 17 to 30 people at any given day. Some from other platoons that would come and sit and hear me talk about the Word of God, about stuff I didn't even know what I was talking about. I spent most of my time just reading scriptures and saying something like this. I'd read a whole chapter and I'd say, well, what do y'all think about that? That was the service. And then we'd sit around and talk about it. I didn't know them, but that's actually a pretty wise way to approach the Word of God with new Christians, is to ask questions and just challenge one another. I wasn't sitting up there trying to act like I knew what I was doing, because I didn't. I'd just read something and say, okay, so what do y'all think about that? And we'd just sit and talk. And it was so much better than anything else I was getting there. I'm not saying don't go to church, sit at home and do this. I'm saying military chapel back in those days was not all that it was cracked up to be. It was not a good place to be, for me anyway. I didn't understand half of what they were saying or what they were doing. They were speaking a language that was completely foreign to me. I guess everybody in the room that was a Christian understood, but I didn't. I was a brand new Christian. I didn't know what in the world they were talking about. But you just see how God is so good to us, you know. How God can take somebody and use them in whatever stage of spiritual development they're in, God can still use them. God can use you. But here's the key. Today you've got to take responsibility for your own life. You might say, well, that's not really something I have to do. Isn't God supposed to take control of my life? It doesn't work that way. A person doesn't get saved because God just looks at a person and says, okay, this person I'm going to win, this person I'm going to save, boom, they're saved. Now I'm going to control them, and they're going to be puppets. They'll just do whatever I tell them to do, just a little automaton. That's not what God does. God presents to us a path, a plan, and then He gives us the choice. And just like I was as a teenager, I knew that if I was ever presented with the choice, good bet I was going to get saved because I couldn't deny it. I couldn't deny what I knew. I couldn't ignore what I knew was real any longer. If I was faced with a choice of saying yes or no to Jesus, I knew I'd have to say yes. And so that's where you're at this morning. Whether you're saved or not today, the question is on the table. What will you do with Jesus? Are you going to serve Him? Are you going to live for Him? He died for you and rose again. Now, are you going to live for Him? Yes or no? And you've got to answer that question in your own heart. I've confronted you with eternity. I've confronted you with a question that you can't ignore. And if you simply ignore it, you may be just like so many people I've seen over the years that waited until the last minute when they were on their deathbed and they had a deathbed confession of faith, and you never really know if that's real or not. I'm not the judge, God is. But that's not where you want to be. That's not what you want to find happen one day, that you're laying there and you're breathing your last breath, and then you finally say, oh, Jesus, come into my heart. Even if you do get saved, what a wasted life you had here. All the wonderful things you could have accomplished. You might be saying, well, I don't know how much life I have in front of me. You have right now. And right now is what matters. You're not promised a tomorrow. None of us are. But you have right now. What are you going to do with it? What will you do with right now? We need to escape and get away from selfishness and disobedience and laziness, greediness, vindictiveness, living with no faith. We need to get these attitudes and these mentalities out of our spirit and just say, God, such as I am, I present myself to you.